Hi, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have a fantastic show with Dawson Church, and we are talking about his book, The Genie in Your Genes. Wow, so welcome, Dawson.
CJ, it's always great to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's take epigenetics, and let's talk about my second grade self. What is epigenetics?
Epigenetics is when genes are turned on or turned off by influences from outside the DNA, outside the cell, even outside the body. So its effects are on DNA from influences that occur outside of the cell or outside of the body. And a really good example, a very simple example, is say you hear a loud noise. You hear a loud noise and you're startled, you don't know what it is. You may have an immediate rise in chemicals in your body like adrenaline, like cortisol, your stress biochemicals. What's happened is your body's taken that startling loud noise happening out here and it's translated that into messenger molecules, internal biochemical messengers that have meaning within your body. And when that cortisol hits, that adrenaline hits, you go to fight or flight, your muscles tense up, your heart changes, your liver dumps sugar into your bloodstream to give you lots of energy for fight or flight. All of these things happen just because of that loud noise outside of you. So it's outside there, but it's being turned into internal neurological and molecular signals in your body. Those are in turn affecting trillions of cells in your skeleton, your muscles, your heart, your circulatory system, and so on. So that's an example of how epigenetics affects you directly.
And then at the gene level too. So one of the things that I noticed that said a lot is that how the gene expresses itself. What does that mean? I'm not, I'm a gene and I'm expressing myself. I mean, what does it mean to a gene to express itself?
Pretty similar to that. Some genes are real drama queens. They turn on in a few seconds. Other genes are slow. They turn on in 6 to 8 hours, whatever it is. But expressing a gene means the gene is essentially doing something. So most of our genes, most of the time, are doing nothing at all. For example, if you're sitting back after work, you're sipping a glass of wine, you're in a beautiful environment, your stress chemicals are not there at all. You have no adrenaline, very little cortisol. And what's happened is that the genes that code, that have the genetic code for those stress hormones, they are turned off. They're downregulated. They're not expressed. But when you hear that loud noise, suddenly there's something that sounds like a gunshot or a car backfiring right next to you. You jump up, and those genes pop on. They're expressed. So either genes are being expressed, or they're being upregulated, or they're being downregulated, or suppressed, or silenced. And so for most of our genome, most of the time, it's not doing a whole lot. But when you need that spurt of adrenaline, when you need that, say for example, there really was a gunshot next to you,
Right.
you need those stress hormones. You then create them very, very quickly, and those genes are expressed very quickly. So our genes are in a constant state of suppression or expression depending on the needs of our body. When we are having a meal, after a meal, the genes that code for our digestive juices, those genes that, for example, produce hydrochloric acid in our body, those genes turn on. When we're done digesting and the signal goes to our stomach that there's no more need to do that, those genes turn off. When we're sleeping, certain genes turn on. They're what we call clock genes that govern our daily cycles of sleeping and wakefulness. Those genes turn on and off in a very regular way. In fact, new research shows that if you're, say, a shift worker, if you're working a night shift, you have real dysregulation of those genes that govern night or day because they're linked to your circadian rhythms. They're linked to the light outside you, outside the body. So again, that epigenetic influence of it being daylight or night is affecting your clock genes and affecting your levels of things like cell repair hormones and stress hormones. When you're sleeping, your body goes into overdrive, repairing your cells, repairing your muscles, taking
Right.
care of all the oxidative damage that occurred during the day. So in all kinds of ways, things are affecting us epigenetically and determining which genes are expressed, which genes are not expressed at any given moment.
Okay, now one of the things that I found interesting in your book, we were talking to Dawson Church, and we are talking about his book, The Genie in Your Genes, which was just updated in 2014. And one of the things that you mentioned is that there's some parts of our genetic code that are just fixed, there. And I think a lot of us, in the book you mentioned this a lot, we think, oh, I'm doomed. My dad died of a heart attack, had diabetes, so I am genetically predisposed to have that. And what was interesting is that there's some things that are fixed, some things that you're born with, some things that you grow into. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I found that kind of interesting, because I think the common misperception is that we're genetically screwed, right? Whatever is there, and we're screwed because we have to live with whatever that is. And that's not quite true.
We're dealt this genetic hand at birth, and we just then act out the play out the hand we have at birth. That's sort of the old fatalistic, deterministic view. Not at all true. Your genes can be affected by all kinds of things. I'll take an extreme example. One of the first genes that was well understood and worked out in the 60s was called the APOE gene, apogene. And the apogene is a gene that helps with the transport of fats, of lipids in our body. If you have, there are 4 different possible apogenes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you have a 4 from your mother and a 4 from your father, you're an apogene 4-4. If you have a 1 from your mother and a 2 from your father, you're an apogene 1, 2, so on. Okay, so a lot of different combinations of apogenes.
Right.
But if you're an apogene 4-4, your chances statistically of getting Alzheimer's disease are about 96%.
Wow. Okay.
If you're an apogene 1-1, they're almost zero. If you're an apogene 3-3, very, very low. But if you're an apogene 3-3, you have a very high risk of heart disease. So each of these apogene combinations carries different risks. So what if you're an apogene 4-4? Right. 96% rate of possibility of getting Alzheimer's, okay? What we're finding is that stress triggers all kinds of changes in the genome. So those people who are less likely to have that gene expressed and have interfering with their well-being are the least stressed. People with the most stress have way, way, way higher risk. So whatever your genetic risk, you are born with this hand, you are dealt this hand at birth, but you then are modifying that hand based on things like nutrition, based on lifestyle, but most importantly, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions are having a dramatic effect on your well-being. Once let's see an example of optimists versus pessimists recently. Found optimists versus pessimists. Optimists, on average, live 8 years longer than pessimists. And that's something that, maybe you're predisposed to be a pessimist as well. You can change that. You can surround yourself by, when I was a kid, when I was 15 years old, I was so depressed. No one wanted to even be around me.
Hard to imagine.
People just didn't like to be. I was like a vortex, a black hole of depression.
I can't believe that.
Changed, I just looked at happy people. I thought, happy people, are they faking it? What's going on here? Can I be one of them? And lo and behold, you can change. You can change even things like clinical depression. So I don't want to make light of mental illness, because those mental illnesses are really hard to live with, but many of them are modifiable. You can do things deliberately that will cultivate positive feelings, optimism, altruism, joy, and just do those things over and over and over again. And after a while, you start to change your psychology, and that changes your biology and gene expression as well.
So in my DNA, there's certain things like my height and my eye color, which you even have this funky story about how someone changed your eye color, but I won't go there because my husband's like,
It's too bizarre.
It's so bizarre. But there's certain things that you figure are fixed. Like I have black hair, I'm not all of a sudden going to be turning into a blonde. I have brown eyes, I'm not going to have green eyes. Those things seem to be fixed.
Yes.
So what are the things that are fixed? And like you mentioned that Alzheimer's, heart disease, those kind of things, those are actually things that it almost seems like anything in which stress could actually really affect the genes. Those are things that we have a role in being able to change. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Things that are triggered by stress, those are the things we have control over. And as far as percentages go, these are rough numbers, but about 15% of your genome is things like height, eye color, your size of your feet, all those things. Those are all fixed characteristics. You can't easily change those. And those are only about 15% of the whole. The other 85% is dynamically shifting based on cues from the environment,
Wow.
based on what you're eating, who you're hanging around, what's going on in your mind, your core beliefs. All of these things are having a big effect, but on that 85% of the genome that's influenced by your control.
Right. Right. Okay. So, and let's actually break that down. So, when you talk about lifestyle, that's about the amount of your beliefs, attitudes, emotional well-being, and then there's also environmental. Like if I'm actually living near some radiation area, area full of radiation, that's going to affect my health, regardless of how happy and optimistic I am. And then,
eating toxic foods, eating foods
yeah.
that you're allergic, environmental toxins, all of those can play a role. And so the big leverage point you have, though, is do the things that you can to make your life as good as possible. Don't neglect things. There are things that are really easy to do that can make your life much better. I'll give you a few examples.
Okay.
I used to get the newspaper. I used to get 2 newspapers a day, and I used to read the newspapers at breakfast usually, and I used to listen to National Public Radio for my news. And I began to question why I was consuming news, like an hour of news every day.
Right.
What was so important to me about this? I couldn't change the result of the election in Kazakhstan. I couldn't change something about a school shooting in Colorado. So here I was taking in all this negative information, and one day I read the headline a few years back. It said, "Unemployment rate plummets." The subhead said, "Improvement not expected to last." See, they have a good news headline, and then the subhead is bad news about good news.
Yeah.
I said to my assistant that day, cancel my subscription to both newspapers. I quit reading the newspaper. I then turned off the radio. I quit listening to NPR and listening to the news on the radio because I realized I could sit there in my car and I could enter a relaxed meditative state and use my commute time to nurture my soul, my spiritual life, my body.
Right.
So those things are 100% out of my control. I remember watching, my wife and I were watching a TV series called Deadwood, and it's just really, really, violent.
Yeah.
Another new one, Breaking Bad. We were watching Breaking Bad.
Yes.
And it's like it's like watching a train wreck.
Yes.
It's a sick fascination with this guy falling apart, and you sit there glued to the TV.
What am I doing to my mirror neurons? I'm just stressing myself out.
Absolutely. So I got to the point where I said, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to surround ourselves. We already have enough natural stress. We already have enough things to be dealing with. Why load on more and more stress? In medicine, it's called allostatic load. You're loading up your system with all this extra stress that's voluntary. So get rid of all the voluntary stress in your life, everything. And you know what? You will be way happier, and after about a week, you won't miss it.
All right, so you do things like meditation. You're actually looking at your attitudes, like am I optimistic or pessimistic, and you're kind of thinking about the beliefs that you have and your attitudes. So how does that work? Let's go into the science part. Okay, how does that work? I mean, what is literally happening to your gene in the most simplistic second grade way? What's happening when you reduce your stress? You're saying that has an epigenetic effect, so it either suppresses or opens the genes, and then something good happens. But what is it? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Super. Let me tell you about Walmart.
Oh, good. I can understand Walmart.
Shopping in Walmart. Okay.
Okay.
I used to have a really stinking attitude about going to Walmart. In Hawaii, they call it stinking thinking. I just hated Walmart. I'd go in there, and I won't even tell you. I wouldn't even do one rehearsal for the why. But I used to really dislike Walmart, and my wife, thank goodness, my wife, pick the right marriage partner. That's a really good stress reduction technique as well. But she said to me, Dawson, why don't you just go in there and relax, and you have to go in there every once in a while to get a prescription or whatever, and see if you can enjoy it. So I began to just, she went with me one day, held my hand, said funny things. We had a great time at Walmart. Suddenly everyone was smiling at me and being helpful. And so I began to adjust my attitude toward Walmart. I went in there yesterday by myself without her coaching. And I parked in the parking lot. I said, I'm going to be in and out of there in 10 minutes. I'm going to have a wonderful time. So I walked up to customer service. I needed to return something. I had no receipt. The woman smiled at me and was we were joking about something. Then I had a good time finding what I found what I needed really effortlessly. People helped me. Everything was just great in my experience there. What's happening then inside my body is so interesting. So before, I was all geared up for battle when I went into Walmart.
Fight or flight.
High cortisol, high adrenaline. What's happening when you have high cortisol and high adrenaline? Cortisol is made up out of two precursor molecules, and those molecules are pregnenolone and progesterone. So when you have high cortisol, when you're gearing up to battle that clerk at Walmart, you're convinced it's going to be antagonistic and not help you out, you're generating lots and lots of cortisol, and you're then grabbing all your body's supply of those two precursors, pregnenolone and progesterone, to make lots of cortisol. So you walk with cortisol you have your cortisol high walking in, you then probably have a negative attitude, you probably are going to project that onto other people, they'll reciprocate, you'll have an even worse time, you'll walk up with high cortisol. Okay, that's the one option. The second option is you walk in there and you don't have high cortisol and you're nice to people and your cortisol drops even further. What's then happening is those two precursor molecules, pregnenolone and progesterone, you aren't scavenging them anymore. Your body isn't grabbing them, and it's making something else out of those two precursors, and that something else is DHEA. DHEA is your main cell repair and cell communication hormone, your main healthy hormone. So now you have lowered your cortisol, freed up all that pregnenolone and progesterone to make lots of your main cell repair hormone.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting thing that's happening. You change your attitude, it's changing your biology, changing your hormones, and there's this massive epigenetic shift just from being thankful about your experience in Walmart.
That's a funny thing.
Sam Walton is a spiritual teacher, but there it is.
Yeah, I love it. That is the perfect analogy. And so what strikes me is that that's in some ways a form of medicine. We try all these medicines, right, to actually create that same effect. I don't know if a lot of the depression medicines are trying to do the same thing or not, because you were saying that, sometimes some of the, depression, those other types of anxiety, those types of things, I assume that they're trying to trick your body into lowering those two hormones and increasing this other DHEA, or does it? I don't know if they are trying to replicate that or not, or what they're trying to do, and how that other process that's so much more natural is so much better, I think. I don't know. I'm just making something up. Is that true? Is it somewhat true?
Well, for example, I don't know if it's still around, but about 2 years ago, I noticed all kinds of supplements in the weight loss section of Walmart to do with stripping cortisol that was supposed to remove cortisol from your body. And the reason for that was the idea is that cortisol is strongly associated with belly fat. So people with high cortisol have more belly fat. So then these manufacturers began to offer these cortisol supplements to strip out your cortisol from your body. Now that is I don't know if there's research on this, but I think it's a terrible idea because you're removing pregnenolone and progesterone, which you need to make DHEA.
Wow.
Yeah. So these kinds of pharmaceutical approaches often have side effects. Now, what the literature seems to show is that for people who are severely depressed, who are severely anxious, those kinds of drugs can be really effective short term.
Right.
But the research is also showing that if you are using those anxiolytics, those antidepressants, those kinds of psychotropics long term, they can actually trigger depression.
Wow.
They literally trigger depression. There's a lot of now investigative reporting going on about this, how these drug company trials are only following their patients for maybe 6 months, maybe a year. After a year, 2 years, 5 years of antidepressants, they're finding that people aren't coming out of depression. They're going into depression and they're staying there because of the disruption of brain chemistry in their cells. There's a wonderful book about this. It's called Anatomy of an Epidemic, and it shows that as we've been prescribing more and more antidepressants, the rate of depression has just about tripled. Okay, way more depression than it was 20 years ago.
Yes.
In society, in lockstep with the rise in prescription of antidepressants. So read the research, and it makes very depressing.
Yeah, no, I actually talked to, I'm shocked at the number of friends that I have that are on these depression, a lot of friends that I know are on these various medicines. And
Yeah,
and
one in 10 Americans is on.
yeah, and then they take the medicines, and then like at a certain point the medicine peters out, it doesn't have an effect anymore, and they have to switch it to a different kind of medicine, and there's kind of a ramp up and a drop down and kind of modulating to get the right level of meds. And so a friend of mine was trying to use meditation as a way of kind of lowering the medicines and increasing. So so we had talked about meditation, we've talked about thoughts and beliefs. How about things that in your book you talk in the Genie and Your Genes, you talk about energy psychology.
Yes.
How does that work with the genes, and how would someone use some of those other techniques? So yes, I know we talked about meditation, your attitudes and beliefs, and why those are important. How do those other kind of EFT, energy medicine, how do those work epigenetically?
I just so strongly advocate people do those kinds of practices. They meditate, they use EFT, they use energy psychology, because they have powerful effects. In one study of relaxation response, the researchers looked at groups of people who were taught to relax. And what they found was after 6 weeks learning to relax, 1,500 genes, 1,500 genes, that is a huge portion of the genome, had shifted in positive ways. Another study
after 6 weeks of meditation, is that what you said?
6 weeks of relaxation.
Relaxation,
yes. Another study, they put men with prostate cancer on a program of a sensible diet, 30 minutes a day of exercise, and meditation. And they found that after 3 months, over 500 genes had been downregulated, including those that we associate with prostate cancer and breast cancer. So enormous system-wide genetic changes epigenetically happening because of meditation, because of diet, because of exercise. So those are the things to do. You may need medication, it's possible, but why not try safe, non-invasive methods like meditation, up your exercise. Those things are under your control. Again, those things aren't relying on somebody else to prescribe to you. Those things are relying on your own ability to take control of your own life. Now, again, there's a role for medication. I'm not saying it's an either or. It's a both and. We have the best of both. Western medicine, we need, if you have a massive bacteriological infection, you need antibiotics. If you have a physical trauma like a broken bone, you need the best medical care possible. If you have a heart attack, all of those things need proper medical care. But for goodness sake, take control of the parts of your life you have control over, like using energy psychology, using EFT tapping, using meditation, and you'll feel way better. And again, you're nudging over 1,500 genes in the right direction if you do those things.
And what was interesting too is from reading your book is that a lot of those, like let's say I go and do, and you talk a lot about in your book about working with post-traumatic syndrome, and that you'd actually work with someone and you would do some tapping and the results would be long lasting, even, months after you did the initial tapping. So is that, I assume that means epigenetically, like those, let's say you did change those 500 genes, that if, 6 months later, also those genes, is that true?
Yeah. They stay changed. What we found in people with PTSD, and we've worked now with thousands of veterans with PTSD, and we've done 3 randomized controlled trials with them as well. So, these high standard of trials, clinical trials, we found that after 6 sessions, just 6 one-hour sessions of EFT, their levels of PTSD symptoms drop by 90%. Okay?
Wow.
PTSD drops by 90%. When we then test them 3 months and 6 months later, they're at the same level. They do not revert back to those high levels of symptoms. So it is having these beneficial effects on their symptoms of PTSD, and that effect is long-lasting. Same with depression, same with anxiety, same with phobias. We've done 4 trials now with people with phobias, fear of heights, fear of elevators, fear of flying, and what we find is that after usually 1 session of EFT, their phobia is gone. When we retest them a year later, phobia is still gone. So the effects of these kinds of simple techniques are long-lasting.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I don't even get. I actually have used tapping, and I've used tapas, and I've done energy medicine.
Good.
Now I feel like a drug addict. I'm on the I'm on the alternative medicine drug addict.
No, you're right, because CJ, what happens? You are a drug addict, and here's how it works. You're getting addicted to your own feel-good hormones. You're getting addicted to high serotonin.
Yeah.
You're getting addicted to decent amounts of dopamine in your neurotransmitter system. You're getting addicted to acetylcholine, to GABA.
Yeah.
You're getting addicted to DHEA. You're getting addicted to a low set point for cortisol. So what happens is we have these set points where we feel comfortable within a range of those neurotransmitters and hormones. And what happens is over time, over maybe 6 months, a year, if you're tapping, meditating, you change your set point, you lower your set point for cortisol, you become stress intolerant, and you raise your set point for DHEA. So if a bad thing happens and upsets you for maybe a day, a week, or something like that, you then feel biologically uncomfortable, and you want to raise your DHEA again, lower your cortisol, and get back to your set point. So you're literally addicting yourself to your own feel-good hormones. And I know I'm really I feel like I'm a feel-good addict. And if anything
addictions never look so
I go
good.
exercise, I go take a walk in nature, do something to restore those good feeling hormones in my brain and my body. But you can boost your serotonin naturally that way.
Yeah.
And do all kinds of other good things inside your body.
I was joking, but I didn't realize that actually it totally makes sense, though, right? I mean, your body gets used to a certain kind of chemical balance. So it wants to, like you said, it wants to go back to homeostasis and get to that point. So if you're kind of like a feel-good addict, then it wants to go back to that point. I think that is fascinating. Okay, so how does the acupressure and acupuncture, you talk about this, I don't even know how to pronounce it, piezoelectric, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but I thought, well, how does this stuff work? I mean, I go in and I get needled. I have a problem with my back and they needle my foot. And all of a sudden, I don't have any pain in my back. And I went to China. I had the whole workup where they put the electrical currents coming through you, little needles. I mean, I find the whole thing fascinating. But what's happening at an epigenetic level? What is happening that those technologies work?
Several different things. One is that we have these energy flows in our body, and when you have a shift in your energy in your body, then you feel it subjectively, you feel it working well. But also studies show that, for example, with acupuncture, when they look at people's brains using an fMRI, so this is an MRI machine that shows you which brain regions are active. It shows that when you get acupuncture in certain regions, for example, of your body, that your fear response goes down. The parts of your brain that handle the fear response calm down and quiet. So acupuncture in a certain part of your body, very distant from your brain, is literally down-regulating, down-cycling the whole fear response in your brain. So there's now research showing that acupuncture is phenomenally effective for PTSD because it turns off that high set point for fear that PTSD people have. Piezoelectricity is also interesting. Piezoelectricity is a current that occurs when you put pressure on certain structures. Crystals, for example, if you put pressure on a quartz crystal, if you knock two quartz crystals together, they can emit little bits of light. That's piezoelectricity as a result of pressure. When you turn on a gas cooker, a gas grill, and you turn it to the light position, it goes click, 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 click. That is a metal element striking a ceramic plate, producing piezoelectricity, making a spark and igniting the gas. So we use piezoelectricity in sonar, in all kinds of technologies that are commonplace nowadays around us, and it's it's form of electricity produced by pressure. That's why tapping on these points for acupuncture points during EFT, during TAT, it works. It's sending these little electrical charges all through your body. I have a little gizmo here in my drawer, actually. I think it will work on the. We'll see if it will work on the radio.
Okay.
I'll unwrap it right now. I wasn't planning to do this, but the worst that can happen is this thing won't work. But the batteries are charged, it will. So we'll find out.
Okay.
And this actually this is called a skin galvanometer, and this will actually find those acupressure points on your body. You can buy these on Amazon for about $100.
Oh, I want one.
And yeah, they are so cool. Now I'm going to put the speaker and the mic together, and let's see if you can hear this. Okay. Can you hear that little tone it's making?
No. Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, I'll look for some acupressure points in my body and hear the tone change when I find them.
Oh my God! Wow. So what is it picking up? It's picking up the electrical impulse in those
Picking
areas?
up those acupuncture points we use in EFT.
You're just pressing a button over there when I get there.
No, I'm not pressing anything. It's just tone changes when it detects a
Electrical
point on the
change.
skin with a different electrical charge. Now, this is a point we use in EFT. This is a point. These are all points we use in EFT, and all it's doing is it's detecting uh, it's detecting a point on the skin where there is a high degree of conductance, low degree of resistance. These things have been around for a century, but just in the last few years, they've miniaturized them. They're really small. So you
Yeah.
can use these to find the acupuncture points. And as you can tell, those are specific points on the skin. So what we do is we tap on these, it sends that,
Right.
here's your electric charge, just like the clicker in your gas
Yeah.
grill. It sends it through your body, and that it then helps you feel soothed, feel better, and it reduces your degree of stress. So these are measurable points.
Oh,
We can
wow.
find them, and they're real.
Oh, I just got a click, click, click in my body. Okay, I totally get it now. All right, so when I go to, oh my God, I see the light. I see the light, Dawson. You're amazing. Okay, so when I go to acupuncture, and acupressure or EFT, it's basically working on all these little points where there's a lot of energy gathered in those areas. So the pressure, that small pressure kind of does something to release that. It's kind of like you said, the spark, the equivalent of the and it kind of sparks that air and says, hello, wake up or turn off or do something. But it kind of, I assume it puts it in the correct position. It may have actually kind of, just like when your stove doesn't turn on correctly and you have to light it, it kind of lights up these areas. So then it's assuming that these areas were problematic and the energy wasn't flowing. Then when you tap on this, it's like, hello, hello. It's kind of like the equivalent of,
Yes.
and then you get the flow
Yes.
working. Is that right?
And these are the end points of the
Yeah.
acupuncture meridians. This is where they end. So the stomach meridian ends here, liver meridian ends here, and so on. So we tap on the end points of the meridians, and we don't know. You don't necessarily know which one will be the most effective one.
Yes.
EFT just has you tap on all of them, and it only takes like 30 seconds to
Yes.
tap on all of them. One of them may be imbalanced. It'll affect that one, and then you'll feel better.
Yeah, because, well, the presumption is just like a river flowing. If there's
Yes.
actually something, if there's like a dam, the
Yes.
energy can't flow. If the energy can't flow, then I guess that if the energy can't flow, then what's happening with our genes and genetic expression when the energy doesn't flow? What's the connection between that and epigenetics?
What I find personally is I use EFT every day, but I also get acupuncture usually once every 2 or 3 weeks. And I find when I get up at the acupuncture table, I feel really, really, really good. I just feel the serotonin rush. And research has shown that acupuncture boosts feel-good hormones like serotonin, like oxytocin. So you feel really good physically once you've had these needles inserted. So the needles go in, they unblock those energy flows. The acupuncturist, of course, is trained to detect where the energy flows are blocked. Unblock them with the needle in that position, then you feel the surge of feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters. It's really interesting to do that. People, get up at the table and they're like, "Whoa, I feel like I've
Been smoking like 20 joints.
Right? Yes, yeah. But
Not that I know what that is, just
no,
hypothetically.
I'm sure you've already heard about it. You don't know for sure, for real. But you do feel good.
Yeah. Well, what I think was interesting is that you hypothesize in your book, we're talking to Dawson Church and we're talking about the Genie in your genes. You talk about, so you have you have a negative, let's say you have PTSD, you have a negative memory in your body and it's actually in your body and you're encoded in your body, your mind, your beliefs and everything. And so when, I know with doing EFT, you think about that event. Mine was, oh my gosh, I don't know about science. I'm thinking about that and I'm kind of, getting into that traumatized second grade position and I'm tapping on these places. So I'm taking a negative feeling and kind of swapping out with this high serotonin feeling so my body can say, let go, CJ. You don't need to be in that fight or flight position anymore. that was your hypothesis, I think. Did I get it right about what's happening?
It is, and the interesting thing is that we used to think about these kinds of feel-good techniques, like yoga, like meditation,
Yeah.
as techniques you would use for the spiritual part of your life. And then you get strong spiritually by doing those things. Then you go into the chaos and the unpredictability of your everyday life. So the old model was, and in fact, in the early Christian church, you had the desert fathers. They were these recluses. They were in the desert. They were these holy people. And they had to remove themselves from the city. They had to remove themselves from everyday life. They weren't married. They were celibate and so on. All of this stuff to get really spiritual, you had to pull back from everyday life. Same thing in Buddhism, same thing in Confucianism, same thing in Taoism, same thing in Hinduism. That there were people, there were the monks, there were the ascetics, there were the holy people, the saints in Hinduism, and they were removed. They were these mystics removed from the world. What is so exciting right now is we're taking these techniques that were reserved for the mystics, we're bringing them into not just everyday life, not just into the boardroom or into the work, the office. We're bringing them into the most stressful parts of our worlds, which is PTSD, which is traumatic stress. We're taking these what were mystical practices, otherworldly practices, and we're having somebody who's in the middle of a flashback, in the middle of a horrendous memory of being raped or being in an automobile accident or being trapped in a burning Humvee in Iraq. And we're having them do these techniques right in the middle of that traumatic stress. Now, when you bring that in, it's so interesting. They're traumatized, they're remembering the horrendous event. So that's happening. They're going to fight or flight, their memory is active, it's driving their whole body into hypervigilance, into high tension. So that's one thing that's going on. Now, suddenly, they're tapping an acupressure point. They're doing diaphragmatic deep breathing. They're bringing in a meditative technique. And what happens is, when the body perceives that, it's got a complete mismatch. You've got this one traumatic event going on, then you've got this one soothing signal happening. And when the body has these two completely irreconcilable things to reconcile, it says, gee, that's a really soothing feeling to be tapping on an acupressure point. That traumatic memory must be in the past. It must be something that is not a threat to my survival right now. And it relaxes. So the memory becomes just a memory. Yes, the car crash happened, but that was 6 years ago, and I'm at peace now. So it completely changes the meaning our body makes out of the event. We calm down, and once you break the association between thinking about the car crash and going into fight or flight, when you tap and break that association one time, usually, the body is so smart, it breaks the association forever. That's why in the 6 sessions of EFT, those veterans, 90% of them walk away and their symptoms are dramatically reduced.
For 6 months, forever, right? I mean,
Forever.
it's forever. Okay, so I have a couple of different case studies that I wanted to go over with you. So I've had a friend who actually, what I found interesting in your book, the Genie in Your Genes, you actually talk about someone who was having problems with post-operation. So she was trying to heal through, I think maybe it was a cancer of some sort, and her mother had died. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because a friend of mine just actually had an operation. He thought he had Bell's palsy, but it was really some type of tumor on the side of his face. And so he had a portion of that tumor removed that was connected to his ear. Now he can't hear in his left part of his ear, and that now he's, instead of stereo sound, he has mono sound, and that's actually affecting his balance, his equilibrium. He's getting dizzy. And I thought, well, I wonder, there's all these techniques out there, and he's tried everything, right? He's tried Rolfing, he's tried massage, he's tried acupuncture, and things aren't really working. So I thought I'd ask you, when you reach that point where you're so desperate, you've tried everything, what's a rational path that you can go down and trying to, Western medicine is not working. So what are some other things you could try, and how do you do it rationally?
I'll give you a super funny example. This comes from a live workshop. I do about a dozen live workshops every year, where I get people in a room, maybe there are 50, 60, 100 people, and we'll learn meditation, we'll do EFT, and of course, people will have just miraculous breakthroughs and healings. But what I like to do in each of those workshops, I usually pick one person who I think will not get better. And I do that because we're having such breakthrough results. I wanted to show all of these budding practitioners in the room, hey, this is not a panacea, it doesn't always work. So usually I'll pick one person for one demonstration where I'm pretty convinced it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So this last one I was doing, and I can talk about this because she gave us permission to actually videotape her. So we're putting a videotape up on our website
Oh,
soon
good.
of this case. So
EFT Universe, right? EFT Universe.
Yeah, that's EFT Universe. So I picked this young woman. She was maybe in her late 20s, but she had 7 years of knee pain, and it's a 7 out of 10 every day. So on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the maximum pain, 0 being no pain, she's a 7 out of 10 every single day. And 7 years before, she'd fallen. She'd had a nasty fall. She'd banged up both of her knees, and she'd had pain then. But she then went in she'd had 2 surgeries, and two doctors had worked on her, and both times her knees got worse, the pain got worse. So now 7 years later, she has knee pain, so she doesn't think the pain's going to go away. And honestly, I didn't think it was going to go away either.
Right.
I just did. And so I picked her out of the audience as somebody. Okay, here's somebody who's a purely physical problem. She had a botched operation after a fall. The pain's been there for 7 years. Surely she won't heal. After 30 minutes of working on the emotional issues behind the pain, and she had all kinds of self-blame, self-talk, and I messed up and made bad decisions. I messed up my life. All these emotional things in her life, we tapped on. Her pain was a 0. Her pain totally went away. And I saw her the next day, and she was like really worried. She was like, well, I just feel
maybe it will come back, or
where'd the pain go? And that's one problem we address in our live workshops is people's problems sometimes collapse so fast. They're like walking around dazed. It's like, I had this problem for so many years. Where did it go? But it's astonishing how quickly even physical conditions like that can change. Cancer. I did a project years ago where I was interviewing cancer patients, and I interviewed people who had miraculous recoveries. Now, in a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association a few years back, they found that 30% of cancers remit spontaneously without any medical treatment. Okay, think about
30%?
30%
Okay.
of cancer. This isn't some fringe journal. This is the Journal of the American Medical Association publishing the study. Okay, so in other words, our bodies have a phenomenal ability to zap those cancer cells, even whole tumors. So I was interviewing people, and people who were tapping, people who were doing visualization, people who were doing meditation, people who were calling on guides and angels, all kinds of stories of cancer remission, just believing, belief. Faith is so powerful. Faith and belief are wonderful. Combine that with good medical treatment, and you have the best of all possible worlds. Now, I don't advocate doing either or. It's not like you never, but like we had one woman, we have a story on our website, who had metastasized stage 4 breast cancer and was given about 6 months to live. Okay, she worked in a hospital, medical worker, and she'd seen what happened to people who get chopped up and radiated and chemotherapy. She said, no way I'm going to do this. And so she didn't want to do that. So she just said, I have 6 months to live. I accept this. And she went home to die. But she said, I'm going to just clean up my whole act before I die. I'm going to clear my emotions. So she tapped and tapped a whole bunch of EFT. And a few months later, she went back. I think she went back. Yeah, she went back to the doctor. 6 months later, she was still alive. They checked all the sites. There were many, many cancers all over her body. And the doctor said, there's only scar tissue left. You're cancer-free.
Wow.
The doctor then said...
I just got chills all over. Wow.
Yeah. If you want to go to EFT Universe and look her up, give us permission to use her story. Her name is Helen. So type in Helen and cancer, and you'll find her story.
Okay.
But the doctor then said, I think we should operate anyway.
Oh my God! No! Oh.
To remove the scar tissue. And Helen said, Thanks, but no thanks.
Oh my gosh. So,
But
so
again,
could it be, let's,
do it with your doctor. See your doctor. Get good medical advice. That may have been the best medical advice. But again, there are now lots of integrative physicians who respect. And I was on a radio show yesterday with a medical doctor
yeah.
who uses EFT with their patients all the time. So there are lots of doctors who integrate the best of all possible worlds.
Right, so that you can actually have both.
Yeah, both.
So where would one find one of these EFT folks? Because I assume, and it's interesting too, because you've had the post-traumatic 6 sessions, right? That could be actually 2, 3, 5, 6 years worth of therapy to kind of affect the same type of change. Then you had this woman doing 6 months. It seems like that's a magic day. We'll take 6 days, 6 sessions. but like, how do you know when you've given it enough and you should just stop? Like, how do you know when these treatments, because like you said, combining the two, how would you rationally approach this? I mean, so I know combine the two, but how many EFT sessions until you're like, it's just not working?
If you look at the studies, you can find all of those at the website research.eftuniverse.com. But if you look at all of the research studies, what you find is that anxiety, depression, PTSD take somewhere between 5 and 10 sessions. Most research shows 5 to 10 sessions, but it's not 20 sessions or 30 sessions.
Right.
Severe cases might take more, but most anxiety, depression, and PTSD, research shows, is resolved in that small number of sessions. But the second thing I'd say is listen to your body. When you have high levels of DHEA, low levels of cortisol, when you have high levels of serotonin, high levels of oxytocin, when you have moderate levels of dopamine, you feel really, really, really good. You're a positive hormone addict and you feel wonderful in your body.
Right.
Your body is a good guide. If when you feel something's wrong in your body, you just kind of know. You can feel your body's out of whack in some way. When you take care of yourself, when you're psychologically healthy and spiritually healthy, you feel fantastic. You feel optimistic. You feel altruistic. You feel really great physically.
Right.
So use your body as a guide. Now, if you're feeling sick, if you're listening to this program and you're feeling really lousy, I'm sorry, I feel for you. I've been there. It feels awful. That's your starting point, okay? You now have a baseline of where you are now. Just try these things. Try meditation. Try EFT. And what you'll find usually is you'll feel a little bit better. Focus on that little bit better feeling. And I know it's hard to ignore the pain,
Right.
ignore the chaos, but focus on the part of your body that feels good. Even if it's the tip of your little finger, just focus on what part that feels good. Give that all your energy, all your attention. What you focus on expands and grows. What you ignore fades away. That happens neurologically, neurobiologically, and psychologically and spiritually. So focus on those things that are positive, that are encouraging, that are good, that are find the kindness, read positive books, hang around people who are turned on to the mystery,
Right.
the majesty of their lives. Just flood your mind with positive messages, positive images. Put really great things all around you on the walls so you can see and have visual stimulation. That's positive. So even if you're feeling bad, do this. You'll trigger good feelings in your body more and more and more until those start to
Shift.
gain the upper hand. So it's so great. I've had people in my classes who are in their 80s and they're doing great and they're feeling wonderful in their bodies because they have focused on a life of service, altruism, optimism, all those things make you feel good. And the option is to not feel good and get sick. There's been research now on people who are depressed. There's a study recently published showing that optimists live on average 8 years longer than pessimists. 8 years, not 8 days, 8 months, 8 years. Altruism has been shown affects your levels of stress and helps regulate these kinds of biochemical processes. So doing good for others, doing good for yourself, having a good attitude is so important. All these things are completely under your control. And if you do them, you'll give yourself a much better life, much healthier life, and a longer, what we call a health span. Your healthy lifespan will be much longer if you do all of these things. I call it in the book, I call this the epigenetic health spiral. It's a cycle. You do things, you feel good. You do more of them, you feel better. You feel more of them, you feel better still. Life knocks you down, but you pick yourself up and keep on moving. You'll eventually function at a way, way, way higher level than you might have otherwise been if you didn't do all this.
Oh, I could talk to you forever. We have Dawson Church. We're talking about the genie in your genes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and your wisdom and this book itself. It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
I love your enthusiasm and the enormous service you do through the program, TJ. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ever. From the bottom of my heart, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.